Hello everyone, welcome to Augment Tech. In this session, we will be learning about Python pandas, reindexing and iteration. By the end of this session, you should be able to understand what is pandas reindexing, the parameters that could be used, reindex to align with other objects, filling while reindexing, limits on filling while reindexing, renaming pandas iteration, iterating a data frame, iter items method, iter rows method, and iter tuples method. I'm excited to get started and I hope the same from you. Let's get started with pandas reindexing. So reindexing changes the row labels and column labels of a data frame. To reindex means to confirm the data to match a given set of labels along a particular axis. And you can, using indexing, we can perform multiple operations, like we can reorder the existing data to match new set of labels. Also, we can insert missing values, that is NaN values, markers in label locations where no data for the label exists. Now let's have a look at the syntax. So syntax is data frame dot reindex, and it could take parameters like keys, method, copy, level, fill value, limit, and tolerance. So we first import pandas as PD and numpy as NP, and then specify a variable, and then we create a data frame, and then we create columns inside the data frame, and then we can create a new data frame reindexing on this existing column specifying the new index. Now let's have a look at the parameters. So the method, copy, level, fill value, limit, tolerance parameters are keywords, keyword arguments. Let's have a look at the table where we see the parameters, the corresponding value, and the description. So keys is a required parameter. It's a string or list containing row index or column labels. And then we have the parameter method, and it could take values like none, pad, ffill, nearest, backfill, and bfill. It's optional, and the default value here is none. It specifies the method to use when filling holes in the indexes for increasing or decreasing indexes only. Then we have copy, which could take either of the values like true or false. And it's again optional. Default here is always true. Whether to return a new object that is a copy when all the indexes are same as that of the old. Then we have level. It could take the values as number and label, and it is optional. Then we have fill value, that is list of values. Optional is it's optional, and default is NaN, specifying the value to use for missing values. And then we have limit, that takes some number, and then it is optional. Default is none. And then we have tolerance, which is optional. So to the reindex, we can specify any of these parameters or arguments. Now let's see how to reindex to align with other objects. So you may wish to take an object and reindex its access to be labeled the same as another object. So here, consider the following example to understand the same. Here we have pandas, imported pandas as PD, numpy as NP, and then we created two data frames here using np.random, that is numpy random, and then the columns are column 1, column 2, column 3. So here if you notice, the columns are same for both the data frames, and only the values that we are passing to our random function in terms of rows and columns is different. So you see, first data frame is having 10 rows and 3 columns, whereas the second data frame is having 7 rows and 3 columns. So when I do df1.reindex like df of 2, so you see this actually creates the columns and the random value inside it. Now let's see filling while reindexing. So here the reindex method takes an optional parameter method, which is filling method. it could take pad or ffill. It will fill the values forward. Backfill or bfill, which fills the values backward, and then we have nearest, which will fill the nearest index values. So to the reindex like a method, you can pass the data frame along with the method that you want, like ffill, pad, or backfill, or nearest. So what will happen here is when you have missing values or any values, it could fill that with a specified filling method. Now let's see what are the limits on filling while reindexing. So here the limit argument provides additional control over filling while reindexing. So here limit specifies maximum count of consecutive matches. So either I can specify limit equals 1, limit equals 2. It depends. So again, limit could be passed as parameter or argument to this in reindex underscore like, and then we can pass the data frame and the method of filling along with the specified value to the limit. Now let's have a look at renaming. So the rename method allows you to relabel an access based on some mapping. It could be a dictionary or series or any arbitrary function. So here we can actually specify the index and then pass in the key and value pairs. So when we do so, what's actually happening is instead of those indexes, it is taking the value that we are specifying to the specifying as the keys of the dictionary index. So here the rename method provides an in-place named parameter, which by default is false and copies the underlying data. When we say pass, when we pass in place equals true to rename the data in place. So here you see the indexes that were 0, 1, and 2 now have been changed to names of the fruits like apple, banana, and kiwi, whatever has been specified to the 0, 1, and 2 as the values. So that is renaming of indexes. Now let's see what is pandas iteration. So iteration basically means to move over or to iterate. So the behavior of basic iteration over pandas objects depends on the type. When iterating over series, it is rearranged as an array, and basic iteration produces the values, whereas in data frames or panel, they follow dict-like convention of iterating over keys of the objects. Basic iteration produces series in terms of values, data frame as column labels, and panel as item labels. Now let's see how to iterate over a data frame. So iterating a data frame gives us column names. So here we see we create a data frame and then we can just iterate over the data frame using some variables. So it is returning all the names of the columns like A, X, and Y. To iterate over the rows of the data frame, you can use the following functions. We have different functions. We have iter items method to iterate over the key value pairs, iter rows to iterate over rows as index or series pairs, and then we have iterate tuples to iterate over the rows as named tuples. So we will have a look at these three methods. Now let's see what is iter items. So this iterates over each column as key, value pair with label as key, and value as series object. So here we have to iterate over two variables in iter items method. This is very much similar to the dict item methods that we have in Python dictionary. Items method. So here iter items collectively means the key and value pair. That is why it is possible to iterate over both key and value using the same for loop. Now let's have a look at iter rows method. So iter rows returns the iterate or iterator that is yielding each index value along with the series containing the data in each row. So here it's iterating over all the rows that have been created. That is row 0, row 1, row 2, and these rows will have specific column data. So when we say we are iterating over one row, it means it will iterate over the all the columns, available columns as well. So this is iterating over row 0. You can see name 0, row 1, name 1, and it's iterating over all the columns in row 1, that is column 1, column 2, column 3, and iterating over all the columns in row 1, row 0 as well as row 1, column 1, column 2, column 3. So this is how you can iterate over rows using iter rows method. Now let's see what are iter tuples. So iter tuples method will return an iterator yielding a named tuple for each row in data frame. So here the first element of tuple will be row's corresponding index value, while the renaming values are the row values. So here you can see we have the data frame, and then we say we iterate using any iteration variable. In this case it is row in data frame dot iter tuples. So there we go. This actually returns the index values along with the column values. Now let's hop to Jupyter Notebook and check out the example of pandas reindexing and iteration. I'll see you there. Now here among Jupyter Notebooks, I'm going to create a new Python notebook here. Let's name this as pandas reindexing and iteration. So here I'll say pandas reindexing and iteration. Let's try the heading. Pandas reindexing and iteration. So what basically reindexing does? So here I'll write a markdown saying reindexing changes the row labels and column labels in a data frame. Now let's have a look at the example. So here I say import pandas as PD, and I'm going to import numpy as np because I'll be using the random module from numpy, and then let's specify n equals 20. And now let's quickly create the data frame. Let's say pd dot data frame. Let's say the column is A, and to which I'm passing some date range. Let's say date underscore range. And then here I pass the date, let's say 1/1/2023, and then periods equals 3, and then frequency equals day. And then let's say the column is X. Or let me specify the frequency as n here because I've already specified the value of n to be 20. And then here I say np.linspace, which is going to give us equally spaced points. 0 stop equals n minus 1, and then num equals m. And then y is np dot random dot rand n. Let's specify n to it, and then now the columns are C. So here I say np dot random dot choice, to which I'm going to pass a list as low, medium, and then high, comma n dot to list. And another column, let's say column D is np dot random dot normal, to which I'm going to pass 100, comma 10, comma size equals n dot to list. Now let's first go and see how this data frame looks like. So here I'm gonna do df. Okay, this gives me an error here saying perhaps you forget a comma. Exactly, yes. And now, alright, this again gives me an error saying module pandas is no attribute data frame. Alright, so I missed an E here. There is another error. Let's check. NumPy.ND object has no attribute to list. Okay, there is a double T here. Another error. Name df was not defined. Alright, so here I'm gonna do df equals, and if I go and run, there we go. This is my data frame. So you see it's having 20 rows, column A, X, Y, C, and D. So now I want to do the reindexing on this. So here I create another data frame, df underscore reindexed equals, here I say df dot reindex method, to which I'm gonna pass the index. Let's say the index is 0 to 5, comma, columns equals A, C, B, and then let me check my reindexed data frame. And there we go. This is how my reindexed data frame looks like. So because we do not have the column B in our main data frame, so it takes all values as missing values or NaN. We do have a C in terms of high, low, medium. So it says high, low, medium, and then we have the values A. So it actually returns these three rows, 0, 2, and 5 for column A, column B. For column C and column B, we do not have in our main data frame df. That is why it says missing or NaN. Now let's see how to reindex to align with objects. Here I say reindex to align with objects. Let me change this to markdown, and let's say reindex to align with other objects. So here I'll be creating two data frames. Let's say import pandas as PD, and I'm going to import numpy as well. Import numpy as np, and then let's say df 1 equals pd dot data frame, and then np dot random dot randn, and then to this I can pass the rows and columns. Let's say 10 rows, 3 columns, comma, list of columns equals, let's say, col1, col2, and then col3. Column 1, column 2, column 3. I'm going to create another data frame. Let's say df2 equals pd dot data frame, and then np dot random dot randn. Here I say 7 rows, 3 columns, and then specify the 3 column names. Columns equals column 1, column 2, and then column 3. And now here I say df1 equals df1 dot reindex underscore like df2, and then I'm going to check my df1, and there we go. This is how the output looks like. So before this, let's first see how our output looks like when we only go and check for our data frames df1 and df2. So this we will be doing later on. And let me first check my df1. This is my df1 having 10 rows and 3 columns, and this should be my df2 having 7 rows and 3 columns. And now if I do reindex like, and there we go, you see I have 7 rows and 3 columns. So what am I doing? I'm reindexing my df1 as df2 which has 7 rows and 3 columns. I can simply go and reduce this to like only 5. You should be seeing only 5 rows in my df1 and df2 when I do the reindex like. So there will be no change for data frame 1 as it has 10 rows and 3 columns. But data frame 2 now will be having only 5 rows. There we go, you see. And when I do df1 equals df1 dot reindex like df2, here also I should be getting only 5 rows. Let's go and check. And there we go. You see, this is how the reindex like works. So now what will happen if the column names are not matching? For example, in my data frame 2, the column here is something like column 4. Okay, let's go and check what will happen now. So you see, instead of column 1 in my data frame, I just have column 4. And now you see, because for column 4, we do not have any values in column 1. That is why it says all missing values. Alright, so let me change this back to column 1 again, and let's quickly run all these 3 cells. Now let's see how to fill while reindexing. So here I'm going to write a markdown that says filling while reindexing or filling while reindexing. So here reindex method takes parameters like pad or fill, then backfill or bfill, or it could fill the nearest value. Now let me create data frames like import. I'll be creating 2 data frames here. Import pandas as pd and then import numpy as np and then df1 equals pd dot data frame np dot random dot randm, and let's say 5 rows and 3 columns. Let's specify the columns list, column 1, column 2, and then column 3. Similarly, I'm going to create another data frame. df2 equals pd dot data frame and then np dot random dot randn, and then let's say I'm going to pass 2 rows and 3 columns along with the column names. Column 1, column 2 should be 1, and this is column 2, and this is column 3. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say the f2 dot reindex like the f1. So now if I go and run this, you should be seeing wherever I have no corresponding values, it is actually giving me missing values, right? So in this case, I want to fill with some method. Let's say method equals, I want to do ffill. Okay, so let's see what happens if I do ffill. So when I do ffill, you can see it's actually doing the forward fill, and this row number 1 is filled onto all the values of my row 2, row 3, and row 4. Alright, so only if I go and do bfill, it should be taking from the last, only if the missing values are somewhere in between, but not the end. Alright, so this is how we can actually fill in, fill while reindexing by using any of the methods like ffill, backfill, pad, or nearest value. Now let's see what are the limits. So here I say limits on filling while reindexing. So here I do import pandas is PD, import numpy is np, and then df1 equals, let's say pd dot data frame, and then np dot random dot random 5 comma 3 columns equals column 1, column 2. Let me create only 2 columns. So here I'm going to change value to 2, and then I'm going to say df2 equals pd dot data frame, and then np dot random dot random, to which I'm going to pass something like 3 comma 2, and then columns equals column 1 and column 2. And then I'm going to make use of the reindex like. So here I say df2 dot reindex underscore like df1. So let's go and check the output. There we go. So the last 2 rows are filled up with nan. So we have to fill, and we can specify the limit also. So here I have 2 rows with nan values. So what I'm going to do is here I'm going to specify the limit equals 1. So see what happens here. So here I actually need to specify the method as well. I missed the method here. So method is, let's say, fill. So in the previous example, we have seen how fill works. So it was doing forward filling, and then now when I say limit out of 2, okay, let's see what happens. Out of 2, you see only 1 is remaining as missing value. The other one is actually filled up using this method fill. If I want both, then I can specify limit, because there could be many missing values. So now you see it's filling all of them. If I say limit 0, it means it is going to fill none of them. Or this should actually give me error. You cannot specify the limit value as 0. It should be greater than 0. So this is how we can specify the limit on filling the missing values while doing the reindexing. Now let's say what is renaming. So here I'm gonna say markdown as renaming. So the rename method allows us to relabel an access based on some mapping. That could be a dictionary, a series, or any arbitrary function. Now let's have a look at the example. So here first I import pandas as PD and import numpy as np. And then here I'm going to create a data frame. Let's say df equals data frame, and then np dot random dot rand n. Let's pass 6 rows and 3 columns, and then let's specify the names of columns to be call 1, call 2, and call 3. So I will be renaming this column names. Then I can go and check my data frame 1. Okay, this should be pd dot data frame, and there we go. This is how my data frame looks like. Now I want to change the names of the columns, column 1, column 2, column 3, to something else. So here I can say df1 dot rename. To this rename, I can actually pass the dictionary. So I want to change my column 1 to something like C1, and then column 2 to something like C2, and then column 3 to something like C3. And then I can now go and check my data frame 1. There we so here I need to specify that this is for columns. Columns equals I can also specify the labels index equals, let's say 0 is something like Audi, 1 is BMW. And let's say I only want to rename column 1 and column 2. Now let's go and check. So here, I'm going to check my data frame 1 and let me quickly check what the problem is. So in order to see the output, I have to specify in place equals to true. Now you see my column 1 and 2 has been renamed as C1, C2, and my index labels 0 and 1 are changed to Audi and BMW. So this is how you can rename. So in order to change the original data frame, we actually need to say in place equals true. Or if you're not doing this in place equals true, you have to assign this to some other variable and then check that particular data frame. Now let's see iterating a data frame. So here I'm gonna write a heading. Let's say this is iterating a data frame. So iterating a data frame will actually return the column name. So here I'm gonna say iterating data frames. So here I'm gonna first import pandas as PD and then numpy as np, and then let's say n equals 20, and then let's create the data frame, that is df equals pd dot data frame column a is pd dot date range. Let's specify the range, let's say 01 2023. You can specify any range, any date you want. Period is equal to 3, and then let's say frequency here is 5, and then I'm creating a column, let's say x np dot length space of 0 stop equals m minus 1, and then num equals m, and then column y np dot random dot rand n of n, and then column c should be np dot random dot choice, let's say it is low, medium, and high. So I can say n dot to list. Alright, so this is my data frame having the columns a, x, y, and c. Let me first go and check my data frame. So there is an error. It should be PD, and there we go. Oops, it should be D and not F. Sorry, not 5. So frequency should be in terms of day. And then let's go and check. There is another error. Let's quickly check. All arrays must be same length. Alright, so here periods, well, I'm gonna specify capital N because I've already mentioned n equals 20, and there we go. This is the data frame. So now I want to iterate over this data frame. So here I do for call in df, and then I can say print call. Okay. So call here is an iteration variable. You can take anything in place of call like I, j, k, x, y, z, and there we go. It's iterating over all the columns and returning the column names like a, x, y, and c. Now let's have a look at the functions using which we can iterate over the rows of the data frame. So the first function that we have is iter items. So here it iterates over each column as a key value pair with label as key and column value as series object. Now let's look at the example. So here I say import pandas as pd and then import numpy as np. Then I'm going to create a data frame df equals pd dot data frame and then np dot random dot randn. Let's say 6 comma 3. Also pass the column names. Let's say columns equals column 1, column 2, and column 3. So let's go and check the data frame first. This is my data frame. Now I want to iterate over both the key value pairs using the iter items method. So here I say for x comma y in df dot iter items. So in place of x comma y, I can also take key value, and then when I print x comma y, x here should be the keys and y should be values. There we go. So we are iterating over the columns, column 0, column 1, and column 2. You can see the names of column are call 1, call 2, call 3, and it's iterating over the complete column. That is why it's returning values for all the rows. Okay, so we also have a warning, depreciation warning here. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll simply ignore the warning by saying import warnings dot filter warning ignore. So now we shouldn't be seeing the warnings. All right. So in place of x and y, I can write key and value also. So here I can say key value in df dot iter items. This is very much similar to the items method in dictionary. So items here collectively means key and value pair. So in place of key and value, we can take any variable you want. The first one will be pointing to the key. This second one will be pointing to the value. So there we go. You see, we got the same output, that is iteration over column 1, column 2, column 3 with all the row values. So this was about iter items. Now let's go and see iter rows method. So here I'm going to write a markdown for iter rows. So this returns the iterator yielding each index value along with a series containing the data in each row. Now let's look at the example. So again here I say import pandas as pd, numpy as np. Let's create the data frame. Let's say df equals pd dot data frame np dot random dot randn. Let's say 6 comma let's take 4 comma 3. So 4 rows, 3 columns. Again pass the list of columns. Let's say it is call 1, call 2, and call 3. Let's go and check our data frame first. So this is how the data frame looks like. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make use of the iter rows method. So here I say for row underscore index comma row in iter rows df dot iter rows, and then I can print the row index row underscore index comma row. Let's go and see, and there we go. You see the output here is it's iterating over the rows. Name is 0, name is 1, name is 2, and name is 3. So because in total we have 4 rows here, so it's actually going along 0, 1, 2, 3 as the indexes or labels. That is why we have 4 rows and the names of rows are 0, 1, 2, 3. So using iter rows, we are actually printing the row index as well as the values inside the row. Now let's see what is iter tuple methods. Iter tuples. So here again I'm going to change this to markdown, and let's say this returns an iterator yielding a named tuple for each row in the data frame. So here the first element of tuple will be the row's corresponding index value while remaining values are the row values. Now let's have a look at the example. So here I'm gonna again import pandas as PD, import pandas as PD, numpy as np. Let's create the data frame. So here I say df equals PD dot data frame and then np dot random dot randm, to which I'm gonna pass, let's say 3 rows and 2 columns. Let's say the column names are column 1 and column 2. Now let's look at the data frame. So this is how my data frame looks like. Here I have 3 rows and 2 columns with some random values. Now I want to iterate over the rows here. So here I say for row in df dot iter tuples, and then if I print row, let's see what happens. This gives me an error saying data frame object has no iter. Okay, this should be tuples and not tuples. And there we go. This is how the output looks like. So this is actually returning the index, the column values, so it's iterating over each row in the data frame, and the first element of tuple will be rows corresponding index value, while all other are the row values. So this is how you can iterate over the rows of a data frame using the iter tuples method, which is returning a named tuple. So you can see the output is inside the parenthesis that is in the form of a tuple. So we don't have to modify while doing the iteration. For example, if I say something like for row in df dot iter tuples, or let's say iter rows in iter rows, and then I want to modify something here. Let's say row of a equals something like 15, and then I want to get the data frame. Let's see if this reflects changes on my data frame or no. Okay, so here it should be for index and row. Index comma row in df dot iter rows, and there we go. You see this actually doesn't make any change to my output. So it is not possible to modify while iterating. So iterative or iterating here basically means to move, or it is meant only for move over, or meant only for reading. And here the iterator will actually return the copy of the original object, that is a weave or just a weave, and it is not going to reflect changes upon the original object. So this was about iterating over the data frames. So we have seen the three different methods that could be used to iterate, like iter tuples, iter rows, and iter items. So this was all about pandas reindexing and iteration. Hope you enjoyed this session. We'll see you in the next.